Hi, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the paddock. Today, we're talking about everyone's favorite bestie on the grid, Esteban Ocon. With you today are Hanna, Meg, Ito, and myself, LeAnne. Hannah's going to start this spotlight off giving you a look into Estie's younger days.
Esteban Jose Jean Pierre Ocon Calefan, born September 17th, 1996. Esteban was born in Evreux, Normandy, to parents Sabrine Laurent, a mechanic who owns a garage in Evreux. If there is one word that dominates Esteban's career, it's sacrifice. So, back when he was a promising karter, his parents had to sell their family home, which included his father's garage, along with putting their jobs on hold to fund his karting career. After selling the house, they lived and traveled from circuit to circuit in a caravan the Ocons also called and used as a motorhome to support their son. Young Ocon found dad literally getting his hands dirty and found that as a thing of excitement. Ocon said in an interview with The Guardian, "When I was going to school in the morning, I would see a car not working, being taken apart. Then I would come home and the car was suddenly coming alive. This is how I grew up. Every day, the same thing. My dad with dirty hands, and there was magic when there was a smell of fuel and rubber. The magic of the car coming alive." So, as of 2022, Ocon lives in Geneva, Switzerland. Besides his native French language, Ocon also speaks in English, Spanish, and Italian. Esteban is racing under the French flag and is a French racing driver. But let's start by diving into the start of his career in karting with Ito.
While Esteban might not be at one of the top teams currently, his karting career was absolutely amazing and marked the start of his incredible journey in motorsport. Let me break it down for you. First off, he showed his exceptional skill at a young age, winning numerous regional and national championships in France, quickly showing people that humble beginnings didn't mean no talent. Then in 2011, Ocon had a major breakthrough when he snatched the CIK FIA European Championship title in the KF3 category. That victory really put him on the map and caught the attention of racing teams and scouts who were all eager to sign him up, which he of course took advantage of and ultimately decided to sign with Gravity Sports, who is a sister company to what was at the time the Renault F1 team, laying the groundwork for him joining the team later on. His karting days definitely laid the foundation for his remarkable career, and he has continued to make waves in the world of motorsports ever since, which the other girls will talk more about now.
So now we are going to get into Esteban starting his debut in single-seaters. So in 2012, Ocon made his debut in the Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0 with Coronen Motorsport. He finished 14th with 4 point-scoring finishes, including being on the podium at his home race at Circuit Paul Ricard. He also drove some of the year in the Formula Renault 2.0 Alps with Coronan. Esteban ended up finishing 7th with 2 podiums, both of which he managed to snag at the Red Bull Ring. He remained in the series for the following year, 2013, but he switched teams to the Art Junior team. He had 1 pole position and won 2 races, one again at his home race, Circuit Paul Ricard. He ended the season by finishing in 3rd place behind Pierre Gasly and Oliver Rowland. Esteban also had a short stint in the Northern European Cup that year. He was able to win a race at the Hockenheimring and had 2 more podiums to close out the year.
So, to further on to his career in single seaters, let's dive into Formula 3. So, Ocon made his debut in Formula 3 machinery at the 2013 Baku Grand Prix with Prema Power Team. He stalled at the first start of the main race, but went on to finish 10th. He continued his collaboration with Prema into the 2014 FIA Formula 3 European Championship, though. He got the lead in the first round at the Silverstone circuit and remained in the lead of the championship for the rest of the season. With 2 rounds to spare, he made a brief appearance at the 2014 Formula Renault 3.5 Series with Comtech Racing. Ocon was crowned FIA Formula 3 European Champion with 3 races remaining, ahead of Tom Blomqvist, sorry if I said that name wrong, and Max Verstappen. He finished on the podium in 21 out of the 33 races. So that's a little over 50% he was on the podium. So go Estie Bestie. And winning 9 of them and recorded 15 pole positions. Ocon made a second appearance at the Baku Grand Prix in 2014, where he qualified 4th for the main race but was eliminated by a multi-car collision on the first lap. Ocon moved to the GP3 series for the 2015 with Art Grand Prix. Despite only scoring 1 race victory, 2 other victories were denied due to penalties, either with the car or due to penalties received on the track. He won the championship by 8 points ahead of Luca Giotto. Ocon recorded 3 pole positions, though, and 14 podium finishes, including 9 consecutive second places from the 18 races total. So, chef's kiss. Ocon drove for the Mercedes-Benz in the first 10 races of the 2016 DTM season alongside his Formula 1 reserve driver role at Renault. He scored 2-point finishes, 9th in the first race at the Circuit Zandvoort before he was promised a Formula 1 race seat. He was replaced by Felix Rosenqvist following his promotion. Ocon's reputation surged on the back of a successful run to the FIA Formula 3 European Championship title as a rookie in 2015, but he's found his achievements overshadowed by rival Max Verstappen because they did come up together in their karting and single-seater careers, so they were kind of always at a consistent battle with each other, who was fast-tracked straight into F1 from F3, despite being defeated by the Frenchman. Ocon backed up the F3 crown, though, with the GP3 Series title in 2015, once more with Art Grand Prix, but then joined Mercedes' young driver roster and was siphoned into a DTM drive for the 2016 season rather than GP2. But despite that, he still got to make his debut in the F1. So let's talk about that.
While more recent fans might not remember Esteban's short but very sweet stint at Manor Racing, it did indeed happen back in 2016. First starting out as their reserve driver at the start of the season by August 10th, after Rio Hayato was dropped by the team, he got a permanent race seat, due to Hiarto's sponsors not being able to meet their obligations. While Manor was known as a backmarker team with limited resources, Ocon still managed to shine. He consistently outperformed his teammate Pascal Wehrlein and truly showed everyone that he deserved that seat, to the point where he was close to starting to score points after only being in the car for 7 races. The Brazilian GP, where he almost scored that first point, was a spectacle, and definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it yet. Being a crazy, rain-soaked race where the safety car was a reoccurring character throughout. Sadly, those horrible conditions meant that he ultimately dropped out of the points at the end of the race, finishing 13th. Which is impressive nonetheless, due to him being a rookie and the car not being the greatest. Unfortunately, Manor folded at the end of the 2016 season, but thankfully Esteban performed and especially showed his ability to outperform his teammate, which caught the attention of a few F1 teams, and he was able to move to Force India for 2017.
On November 10th, 2016, Force India signed Esteban Ocon for the 2017 season as a part of his multi-year contract with Mercedes, with Sergio Perez as his new teammate. Esteban scored his first ever F1 points at his first race that season at the Australian Grand Prix, and scored points at the next 4 races, including 5th place at the Spanish GP. After a 12th place finish at the Monaco Grand Prix, Esteban recorded 12 consecutive point finishes, but he was often found to be involved in incidents with Checo. At the Canadian Grand Prix, Perez ignored team orders to let Ocon through in order to challenge Daniel Ricciardo for 3rd place. At the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Ocon and Checo collided again, forcing Perez into retirement and giving Ocon a puncture. They made contact again at the Belgian Grand Prix, where Ocon was squeezed towards the wall leading up to the Eau Rouge, which is not a place to force someone off. Force India team owner Vijay Malla stated that the repeated incidents were, quote-unquote, very concerning, and that he would enforce team orders after that point in time. Ocon started the Italian GP in 3rd place after the Red Bull drivers received penalties, which is the highest grid position of his career so far. He went on to finish the race in 6th, however. Esteban spent much of the Mexican GP in 3rd place, but unfortunately, he ended up sliding back a few places and finished in 5th. His streak of finishing 27 consecutive races ended at the Brazilian Grand Prix, where he had a collision with Romain Grosjean on the first lap. He finished his first season in Formula 1, 8th in the Drivers' Championship, scoring 87 points, which, if I do say so myself, not bad for a second year in F1. Now, moving on to his 2018 season, Ocon continued alongside Perez at Force India. He scored his first points of the season at the Bahrain GP, where he managed to finish in P10. At the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, he was involved in a first-lap collision with Kimi Räikkönen that ended his race. Ocon retired with an oil leak at the Spanish GP. Later, he scored 5 more points finishes before the summer break, but unfortunately had to retire from his home race after a first-lap collision with his fellow Frenchman, Pierre Gasly. After Force India's financial collapse and the purchasing of its assets by Canadian businessman Lawrence Stroll, during the summer break, the new owners confirmed that Ocon and Perez would remain with the team for the rest of the season. But Esteban had a sort of informal agreement with Renault to join them for the 2019 season, but that kind of all went into the bin after the team unexpectedly signed Daniel Ricciardo after he left Red Bull, which left Esteban wondering what his future would look like. At Racing Point, Force India's first race, which is the team's new name after the purchasing of the team by Lawrence Stroll, Ocon achieved the joint highest starting position of his career at 3rd and went on to finish the race in 6th. Ocon and Perez had another moment together, yet again, where they collided on the first lap of the Singapore Grand Prix, causing Ocon to crash into a wall and end his race. The team made a statement that the drivers acting out like that was unacceptable and, from there on out, banned the drivers from racing each other. Ocon was disqualified from 8th place at the United States GP, COTA, after his car exceeded fuel flow limits. At the Brazilian Grand Prix, he collided with race leader Max Verstappen, damaging both cars. However, both drivers were able to continue racing, and Ocon in turn received a 10-second time penalty for causing the incident. And if many of you have seen Drive to Survive or different clips of this race, this is the race where we get the moment of Max and Esteban arguing in the garage, and Max pushing him and getting into a fight, and Estie's just kind of like, okay. Max actually was ordered by the FIA to serve 2 days of public service at the discretion of the FIA for intentionally making physical contact with Esteban, which I didn't know before doing research for this episode, but I found that pretty interesting that, like, the FIA will actually punish drivers if they do something to another driver. But crazy,
I just wanted to say, holy shit. That's crazy.
right? Like, I knew about the incident, but I didn't know about the whole punishment thing. And both of them were summoned to the stewards, so it wasn't just Max, but obviously Max is the one who got the punishment because he physically harmed Esteban. But back to Estie's season, he ended up finishing it with 49 points in the Drivers' Championship, which put him 12th in the championship. So now we're gonna turn over to his next season, 2019.
November 23rd, 2018. It was announced that Ocon would join Mercedes as a reserve driver for the 2019 season after it became clear that he would be replaced by Racing Point's team owner Lawrence Stroll's son, Lance, an outcome that was confirmed a week later. Ocon did not take part in a Grand Prix weekend during the year. He claimed to have been in discussions with Mercedes for the 2020 season, remarking that he was very close to be replacing Valtteri Bottas at the team. Mercedes ultimately decided to continue with Bottas, though. So he spent the portion of 2019 as a reserve driver doing sim work and support functions for Bottas and Hamilton.
Thankfully, 2020 saw him get a seat again. As I mentioned when I talked about his karting days, he built a relationship with Renault very early on, and in 2020 that finally paid off when he signed a 2-year deal with them to replace Nico Hülkenberg, partnering PGP favorite Daniel Ricciardo. Throughout the season, Ocon showcased his talent and gradually found his rhythm. While he faced some challenges and tough moments, he demonstrated steady progress and determination. One of the highlights of Ocon's 2020 season was the dramatic race at the Sakir Grand Prix. In the event, he showcased his racing skills and resilience, finishing an impressive second. It was a fantastic result for both Ocon and Renault, and it demonstrated his ability to perform at a high level under pressure. It gave Renault their highest finish since 2010, definitely confirming that signing Esteban was the right decision. His consistency and ability to score points were commendable, consistently finishing in the points throughout the season, attributing to Renault's pursuit of a strong 5th position in the Constructor Championship, 50 points clear of Ferrari in 6th place. His partnership with Ricciardo was also noteworthy. The two drivers had a healthy and competitive relationship, pushing each other to extract the best performance from the Renault car. Overall, Esteban Ocon's 2020 season at Renault displayed his growth as a driver and his ability to deliver solid results. It provided a strong foundation for his future endeavors, setting the stage for future progression in the sport.
In 2021, Renault morphed into its supercar sub-brand Alpine. So still same brand, just different name now. And Ocon was joined by two-time F1 world champion Alonso after Daniel Ricciardo left for McLaren. In the team's first race as Alpine at the Bahrain Grand Prix, Ocon was rear-ended by Sebastian Vettel in Aston Martin. Ocon finished the race, though, in 13th, and Vettel later apologized for the incident. Ocon delivered Alpine's best result, though, with a shock victory at the Hungarian Grand Prix, while starting 8th at the beginning of the race and having benefited from a first turn pileup that lifted him from 8th to 2nd, which became first place when race leader Lewis Hamilton pitted for dry weather tires 1 lap after the rest of the grid. Ocon held onto the lead for the remainder of the race, fending off Sebastian Vettel to claim a famous first F1 win for both himself and Alpine. which in turn marked a first for the Renault company since Alonso's Japanese Grand Prix success in 2008. This win was followed by point finishes at the next 3 races. The Turkish Grand Prix took place in damp conditions and Ocon finished 10th, having run the entire race distance on one set of intermediate weather tires. This was the first time a driver had completed a full race distance without making a pit stop since 1997. So combine those two together, that was 2 firsts for Alpine at their first year of the new brand. So that's pretty incredible for Alpine and Esteban Ocon to be the person to do that. His first retirement of the season, though, came from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with a turbocharger failure. During the rest of the season, though, Ocon was a regular point scorer, highlighted by top 5 finishes at Qatar and Saudi Arabia and many more to lift him to the 11th in the driver's standings, scoring 74 points to Alonso's 81. Into the 2022 season, looking to build on his race-winning campaign from the previous year, Alpine retained Ocon and Alonso for the 2022 season. So the season did not bring joy, to be frankly honest, for the Alpine team, nor for Bestie, which is his nickname, FYI, as he struggled with many car problems throughout the year. So let's highlight some of that. Ocon finished 7th at the season opener of the Bahrain Grand Prix, despite receiving a penalty for the colliding with Mick Schumacher. He qualified 5th and finished 6th at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, where a close battle with Alonso ended with Ocon being ordered by the team to hold his position. Team orders, gotta love them. A crash in practice at the Miami Grand Prix, though, forced him to miss qualifying and start last on the grid. He recovered in the race to finish 9th, though, and was promoted to 8th when Alonso received a penalty. Ocon finished 9th at the Monaco Grand Prix, but was demoted to 12th by a penalty for colliding with Lewis Hamilton. At the British Grand Prix, Ocon qualified 15th due to battery issues and ended up retiring from the race with fuel pump problem. Despite the significant upgrade packages brought to the Alpine car that year, Ocon qualified 5th at the Belgian Grand Prix, but was demoted to 16th by an engine component penalty. He did recover in the race to score points in 7th place. He started 17th at the Singapore Grand Prix, having experienced brake problems in qualifying, and then retired from the race with an engine failure. Ocon was eliminated in the first qualifying session and started 18th at the US Grand Prix. He finished 11th, though, after taking a new power unit element and starting from the pit lane. He was involved in separate collisions with Alonso in the Sao Paulo Grand Prix sprint, with damage in his car dropping him from 17th place. He recovered to score points in the race, though, by landing in 11th. Ocon's best result of the season was at the Japanese Grand Prix, though, where he held off Lewis Hamilton to finish 4th. Despite many car problems, as highlighted above, he managed to still score points in many races, where Ocon ended the season in 8th in the Driver Championship, equaling his best result previously achieved in 2017. He scored 92 points to Alonso's 81, with Alpine stepping up its competitiveness despite the many car problems. Even with the new technical regulation directive by the FIA to surpass McLaren as the 4th best team on the grid, Ocon scored points in 16 out of the 22 Grand Prix. Now, to go into the present. So, Ocon is under contract to remain with Alpine until the end of the 2024 season. For 2023, though, he did gain a new teammate and former karting rival Pierre Gasly, as Alonso departed to Aston Martin. His training was impacted prior to the start of the season, where he got very sick with the lung virus. Don't worry, he's good now. At the season opening at the Bahrain Grand Prix, Ocon received penalties for being out of position on the grid, failing to serve the penalty though correctly and for speeding in the pit lane. He eventually retired from the race due to mechanical issues with the car. So then to go into the Australian Grand Prix, running in 10th place at the final restart, Ocon was involved in a heavy collision with teammate Pierre Gasly, who apologized ultimately for his role in the incident. Ocon crashed at the qualifying of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix though, and Alpine then made changes to his car under parc fermé conditions, forcing him to start the sprint race and the main race from the pit lane. During the race, though, Ocon ran on hard tires until the last lap. So I don't know if you watched this race, but he went into pit on the last lap, and photographers began entering the pit lane, not realizing that Ocon was going in and had yet to pit, and nearly avoiding being hit by his car. That ended up causing a lot of concerns, and he flat out came out and said, somebody could have been really injured. We need to be more careful. And so glad that everybody's okay and that he's okay. Then to go into Monaco Grand Prix after the craziness from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, he ended up starting third in Monaco after Charles Leclerc ahead received the penalty. Ocon held off Carlos Sainz Jr. though in the first half of the race, but lost a place to George Russell during the pit stops. A mistake and penalty for Russell allowed Ocon back into third place, earning him his third career podium and the Driver of the Day award. More points came at the Spanish and Canadian Grand Prix and in Austrian Grand Prix sprint race where he held off Ferrari's Charles Leclerc and McLaren's Lando Norris in a wet sprint in the main race. Ocon finished under the points after receiving a penalty for an unsafe pit box release. Post-race, he received another 4 penalties for track limits totaling 30 seconds. His 5 penalties for that Grand Prix alone gives him a record for the most driving penalties in a single race in the history of Formula One. That's never happened before. To this date, nobody's ever received that many penalties. Bless this man's soul. Now to talk about his life outside of F1 and what the rest of the season holds.
Bestie is a pretty private guy for the most part. He doesn't really share his personal life outside of F1, but one of the main things that he does share and that he absolutely loves and adores is his Marvel comics, but in particular, that man loves Spider-Man. He actually got gifted all of the Spider-Man comics at last year's Secret Santa that F1 holds from Daniel Ricciardo, which I thought was very sweet and very thoughtful of Daniel. And he also wore a Spider-Man themed helmet at COTA, which I thought was pretty cool. And I also love that about Estie just because I'm a huge Marvel girl myself. And I really wonder which Spider-Man is Estie's favorite. I guess which of the movies. Like, is it Tobey Maguire's? Is it Andrew Garfield's? Is it Tom Holland's? Who knows? I'd love to ask him that one day.
I mean, who wouldn't? And honestly, we've talked about him at length being a solid driver during this episode, and he's just shown it again this season. And I hope me saying that he'd had a solid season so far hasn't jinxed it just now, but his overtakes, especially this past weekend at Spa, for example, were just a joy to watch. And Estie, in case you are listening, we need more, please. Please, just do more. Just keep going.
So I will say, in reference to Meg, I hope it's either Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland, personally. While I will say, though, to go back into his career, while he's had quite a season, and he still has quite a season still to go, what do you think the remainder of the season will bring for Estie Bestie / Alpine? I, for one, would love a few more podiums or the driver of the day because his smile is just one for the books. That that just Sorry, it's amazing to see, and it's just beautiful, and he deserves it, and he's not one we traditionally see on the podium. And I will say, completely off topic, I did do a TikTok for the Paddock Girls podcast when you did your Alpine question of the day, like I'm answering questions. I recorded this whole video asking you a question and you never responded. So I'm going to ask you here in case you hear it. So if you were, as everybody's laughing at me for this question, if you were stuck on a deserted island with two F1 drivers currently on the grid, who would you choose and why? So if you hear this, please let me know your answer because I would love to know your feedback and your philosophy behind that. So let a girl know, please. And yeah, so that's me. And I hope that the rest of the season is great for you. And thank you.
Yeah, I mean, please, Esteban, if you are listening and just heard Hannah's question, please do let us know. We're dying to hear. This episode's pre-outro is going to be our favorite moment of Esteban's. That is this season when he got on the podium in Monaco and dropped his champagne, ending his race celebration just a touch early. Manifesting you get another podium, Estie, so you can get a redo spray. And hopefully not drop it again or break anything.
Who doesn't love learning about the drivers? I love this Ocon spotlight, and I want to know what drivers you're looking forward to hearing us talk about. Let us know on our socials. Everywhere we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except Twitter. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. And also, happy first day of summer break, everybody. Don't worry, we're going to be counting down the days for you. Today, 25 days until lights out. Thanks for joining us in the paddock, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye, Craig.
See ya, Craig.
Bye, Craig.
Bye, Craig.